Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's 1 million by 1 million strategy roundtable for entrepreneurs. 1M by 1M, as you know, is the first and only global virtual accelerator for technology startups. We have been doing this for a long time. 1M by 1M launched in 2010. In support of our mission, we do these free roundtables every week, almost since 2008. This is the 652nd session. So very long process, very long journey of doing these roundtables. You know, more than 250,000 people have participated. And as you know, we also do, we invite not only entrepreneurs, we also invite investors to these roundtables to discuss their investment thesis, and especially when new things are happening in the market, we invite investors to think, to help us think through how they are processing the market, the trends, etc. So for those of you who have been here the last few weeks, we have been working on AI investment thesis, and we've had some fascinating conversations. So today we're going to add to that with Yash Hemaraj, general partner at BGV and founding partner at Arka Venture Labs, which is BGV's accelerator in Bangalore. Yash, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Sona. It's my pleasure.
So Yash, let's start with a bit of kind of overview on how you, your partners, BGV as a firm, is thinking about AI investment thesis, the trends, the developments, you know, all of that is going on, swirling around us right now.
No, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure. So just a bit of background about myself. I've been with BGV for the last 10 years. Before that, I built indoor wireless networks. So come from a bit of an operating background and been on investing for the last 10 years. And in about 2018, 2019 timeframe, we created this Arka Venture Labs to help Indian founders build from India and come over here. Generally, the firm, we are early stage investors, so we invest very early in the company's life cycle. We are enterprise AI investors, so we invest in enterprise technologies that transform industries. And we invest in cross-border companies that are built in innovation hubs such as France, India, Israel, etc. And we help those founders come over here. So our core of our thesis is enterprise technologies, right? So, and definitely AI is a force multiplier. We are seeing massive adoption of AI in multiple different industries. However, very early on in the life cycle, I'm talking early 2016, 2017 timeframe, there are a lot of ML techniques, a lot of computer vision techniques started to get democratized, meaning these are easily available for anybody to start building on that. So we started looking at these companies and said, okay, look, this can really transform the way businesses have conducted themselves and really have direct bottom line impact. A lot of productivity improvements, a lot of efficiency improvements, a lot of cost savings, etc. But one thing that we also saw was that AI by itself, even though it's a force multiplier, cannot penetrate enterprises. And think about a factory floor worker, right? A factory floor worker who has to kind of come in 8 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whatever in the morning, and then leaves work for home in the afternoon, evening. They don't care about what is the AI system in there. They care about how do I do my job efficiently and better and go home at the right time, right? So there were a lot of predictive technologies that were coming up earlier, and now the technologies have evolved faster and become much more powerful. But the underlying premise is still the same, which is how do you enable humans to do their job better? So we focus more around that human-centric AI, right? A couple of critical components that we discovered are very, very important in this journey. The first part is workflow automation. So we need to really, really understand what are the tasks that humans do as part of their job when they come into work and before they leave work. right? And we need to embed AI deep into that workflow. For example, the factory floor worker, if he's running out of inventory, it doesn't help to kind of show just a predictive line, kind of indicating that he'll be out of stock. You need to help that person really say how much I need to order, when I need to order, from where I need to order. If I need to order from X, here are the implications in terms of delivery time, costs, carbon footprint, etc. So you need to kind of provide the right information at the right stage of the workflow and help them execute it. In fact, the best forms of AI is invisible, right? So we look for deep workflow automation. And the third aspect of it is data. And we discovered a lot of companies which are boiling vast amounts of data and trying to find the needle in the haystack. Instead, when you're in the workflow, what we discovered is that you can collect the right forms of AI that help converge your models faster, right? Collect the right amount of data, right volume of data, right type of data, right? Sometimes you may have to go and label the data. So we look for kind of these data procedures, right? How you aggregate data from different sides, how do you put protection layers around privacy, security into your stack. And finally, how do you kind of generate data if you don't have access to data? So the combination of these three things, AI techniques which span multiple aspects, multiple type of AI, like machine learning, computer vision, and now generative AI capabilities, etc., workflow automation, and data. The combination of these three things, when you put together in a fully integrated end-to-end solution, that's where you see real magic happen. That's where you see real benefits of AI in enterprises start to come to the front, right? So that is kind of core to our investment thesis. Before generative AI capabilities, we kind of uh, created this term called Enterprise 4.0 technologies to kind of allude to this combination of AI workflow automation in a full stack, in vertically integrated solution. With generative AI capabilities, the world has expanded. The capabilities that you can do have just multiplied. When you look at how much data and what types of data machines can consume, has kind of quadrupled or grown hundredfold, actually, given all the investments that has gone into creating those GPU clouds everywhere. So machines have really become good at understanding vast amount of data. They really become really good at process execution. But for us, we really look at that interplay between humans and machines. So that uh, combination of human ingenuity and machines, which can transform industries, we are calling it Enterprise 5.0. So we have a lot of thought leadership around this aspect, a lot of companies that are coming up and disrupting legacy industries, companies that are taking traditional enterprise functions like, software development, revenue operations, finance operations, customer engagement, etc., and completely automating initially by co-pilots, but then with completely fully integrated um, agents. So these are some of the things that we are seeing and very excited about. Where this is taking us.
So, Yash, I kind of agree with you on workflow automation and very precise domain-specific AI being a much better opportunity to build businesses and do startups in than boiling the ocean and trying to do something much broader. In general, in startups, I don't think broad brushed approaches work very well. They just burn a lot of capital. They don't really produce very effective companies. There are a few things that I want to pursue in this context, and then I want to do some examples of what you have invested in, touching upon those aspects. So, before generative AI came into play, I think people were thinking about data that is specific to a particular workflow, a particular domain, a particular problem solving. And we were not looking at very large data repositories. Within the domain, yes, it was still big data and you needed machine learning to train the models and so on, but it wasn't data of the scale that we're talking about today. With the advent of, my goodness, a bird just crashed against my window. Um, uh, so coming back to what we were talking about, with the advent of generative AI, there is the notion of big data has really expanded, and it has come into a general consciousness. It's like it's no longer domain specific data, it's data that is all over the place. And as a result, that data hallucinates. That kind of language modeling, inherently, hallucination is built into that kind of language modeling and so on. So as we go through the examples in your portfolio to further illustrate what you're doing, I want you to think about, this kind of very large language models, generative AI that hallucinates versus the pre-generative era, generative AI era, where we were still working with big data, but it was not hallucinating because it was not working off language models only. It was working on machine learning models, but not necessarily these hallucinatory learning, large language models. So that's one point that I want to discuss in the context of your examples. And then the second point is there, in your examples, are you seeing a benefit of smaller language models that are more constrained, that are domain specific, vocabulary constrained within that domain, workflows constrained within that domain, rules perhaps constrained within that domain, that controls the behavior of that data and the learning algorithms better? So instead of large language models, I'm talking about smaller models that are much more precise and less error prone in solving problems. So with that, those two additional questions, I want to do a few of your portfolio examples of what kind of problems are these companies solving, and what are you seeing in those specific examples? Let's start with one.
Correct. Now, this is kind of the constant debate that we are having, and we have also kind of put together this Human AI Alliance, where there are experts from various different industries, all the way from large companies to startups coming together and helping us kind of also craft this thesis. We call this the Human AI Alliance, and it has people from enterprise adopters, startup founders, academic universities, investors, etc., across the entire AI stack. And what this is kind of enabling us is the real kind of understanding of where AI is overinvested, where there are opportunities, where some new AI native businesses are emerging, etc. And so let me tackle one of the questions that you mentioned, which is, where is, the whole large language models versus smaller model debate is kind of going. And the answer is, I think, it depends, right? Like a lot of things in life, the answer really depends on what is that business problem that you're transforming, the business problem that you're kind of going after, right? And in any enterprise context, we believe that there will be place for large language models as well as some domain specific models. It depends on where in the workflow that you have to use what, right? For example, how much ever billions of dollars that has been invested in the large language models, they can I mean, the capabilities are like multiplying like crazy. Like the capabilities that you see from some of the new models, like we are talking already about GPT-5. The projected capabilities of these things are mind blowing, and it would be a missed opportunity for a lot of the enterprises to not use these foundational models, right? Over time, we believe that these models, given the level of investment that it takes and the amount of investment that has already been made, it is going to be very difficult for smaller venture funds to be investing in these. Also, these applications, these kind of LLMs will get commoditized. It will become more like a utility. where you build different applications on top of, right? So that's where we see the large models kind of going towards, and the capabilities are becoming really, really, really strong, right? So in order to handle some of the things that you mentioned, like, hallucinations, there are already some very interesting companies that have come up, including at Arka, we invested in a company called Encrypt AI. Encrypt AI provides hallucination management. They basically evaluate every single model and they tell you what are the chances of bias, the chances of hallucination, the chances of bringing in profanity, etc. And they help, and these are kind of, from a consumer context, it may be okay, but from a real enterprise context, you cannot have this. Otherwise, it hurts your brand, etc. So you need to put in mechanisms. You need to understand what are the prompts that are going in and understand what are the the outcomes that are coming out of the models, and have some governing mechanisms on that end, right? So, and Encrypt provides all of these capabilities, all the way from red teaming to test out whether what you have wanted to do versus what you're actually kind of providing is actually working. What are some of the risks that you have to underscore? We also are big believers in the GRC domain, where we see companies, needing to kind of, put in that, governance, risk, and compliance related capabilities. A lot of laws are coming in, so you got to comply with those local laws. So the capabilities are being addressed while the problems are there, but the startups are also addressing it, and it's a place where we are also investing in order to kind of build enterprise grade applications, right? So that's on the large language models. Now switching to some of the underweight factors today, where there are very interesting investment opportunities and very interesting opportunities to build some companies, are around these small domain specific models, or around places where you can provide GRC capabilities, where you can provide agentic software capabilities, right? So, we equate this generative AI movement to kind of what happened during the browsers, right? And when you look at the history of how capabilities evolved, there are hundreds of kind of capabilities that were provided to enterprises to build enterprise grade application. In the generative AI world, the opportunity is around building fully autonomous AI agents. And those agents need identity control, they need governing mechanisms, they need role-based access control. So these are all the capabilities that are being built. I'll give you a couple of examples in our portfolio. We invested in a company called Lyzr, LYZR.ai. It's a very interesting India-US cross-border companies, already have hundreds of customers, and they're helping enterprises build agentic software, right? For example, you go into any enterprise which wants to adopt these capabilities. They need to put together hundreds of different tools, like you need to work with LangChain, you need to kind of bring in this GRC systems, you need to have a role-based access control, you need to have an identity system, etc. And this company, Lyzr.ai, is providing that end-to-end solution. Not only that, they also offer pre-built agents as examples that the enterprise right on day one can adopt and start making changes to it, right? So this is where
I have a question. This
Mhm.
sounds very interesting. Lyzr sounds very interesting. So how does this company go to market? It sounds like it's kind of like a horizontal technology, so presumably selling to the CIO.
CIO or business leaders. And so this is where their unique way of approaching or is around, they build pre-existing agents for certain domains where your data architecture, your kind of workflow are well understood. So this enables business users to start using it, and because these guys have enterprise grade features which integrate within the existing system, right? So take an example of revenue operations.
They have a platform, but they have themselves built applications on top of that and selling to the business users for those applications.
Yeah. And their whole thing is like, if you want to build an agent, underneath that agent, you need to have a mixture of expert agents, right? For example, take a example of venture capital itself, right? If you want to build an investment thesis on a particular area, you need to have sub-agents, one which looks at competition, one looks at TAM, one that looks at financials, one that builds the investment memo, and they all need to interact with each other, right? So the framework is in this kind of mixture of multiple agents. However, in order for the enterprises to catalyze their activities, they have pre-built agents in multiple domains. So they can take one of those and start making changes, start giving in the inputs that are needed in order to make things work. And that is where, the large language models that have come in have some amazing capabilities in order to kind of, understand a particular document, break down a document in, and the procedures that are there in your existing standard operating procedure documents into steps that could be executed, right? So a real enterprise system will have a combination of all of these technologies, right? So that's how Lizer is kind of, addressing this in the agentic software space.
So in the case of Lizer, what is their where in the enterprise are they getting initial traction?
Business users.
What business users? Like what function?
Like, for example, they have already agents for marketing ops. When marketing and their go-to-market is to kind of not just go to marketing ops saying that, hey, we have this AI technology that you need to use. They already are kind of doing research on, okay, what are the steps that you are doing? And here is an agent that you can start adopting that can automate 5 out of the 8 tasks that you're already doing using their agent. Similarly, they have a SDR revenue agent called JSON, JASZON, and they, when you go into the revenue functions, chief revenue officer, business officer, you can already start kind of, making use of this agentic software already that can automate hundreds of tasks that an SDR and a BDR needs to do, right? So this is how they go to market. But in any enterprise, there are teams that are coming up which kind of care about data quality, data integration, etc. So when you look at that end-to-end system, right, let's take an example of revenue operations itself. You need to bring in external data. Let's say a public company is your prospective customer, right? So there are a lot of information on the public companies, S1 filings, earnings calls, just some news events that are happening. So you need to bring in external data. You need to bring in your internal data, which is, okay, how big is this account? What is the buyer committee that is engaged in this particular account? What is the previous engagements that are happening, etc. So that's the customer context, right? And then you will have information which are internal exchange, right? An AE and SDR may have exchanged some unstructured conversation around, okay, look, this account, they're coming in with, very high intent levels, this is the previous conversations, etc. So there is some Slack exchange or an email exchange, etc. Like a real enterprise system, if you want to have real benefits, have to take in all these type of data and put in the right privacy, protection, governance layers on the top. So that's where the tools like DAX, etc., kind of come in to provide role-based access control for kind of your data aspects, right? Companies like Stack Identity Pro comes in and provides identity governance around, which agent is accessing which part of the information, right? So once this whole thing happens, there are other people gets involved, right? At that time, the CISO gets involved around the data governance aspects. The CIO gets involved around your data architecture, etc. I'm talking about large enterprise sales, which is where you start engaging with these decision makers. And Lizer then has the ability to kind of, because of the way the fundamental architecture is built, is able to kind of expand into other use cases within the enterprises, right? So you start with the business users, then get into other stakeholders, right? But have solid answers, solid kind of architectural elements to win over each of these stakeholders. And if you don't do this, you will get interest, but conversions will be low, right? This is kind of true to kind of many of the platforms that we see. And when we do our evaluations, these are the insights that we are looking at. It is the founders with deep domain expertise, founders who understand the architecture, founders who understand the barriers, and kind of see what is that innovative thing that they have done in order to get them past the hurdles that they are going to face. Because enterprise sales is becoming a multi-stakeholder committee-based sales, right? You need to have that mechanism to address it.
Enterprise sale has always been that.
Yeah.
It's a, so we had this solution selling methodology that you have to break it down to technical decision makers, economic buyers, champion, coach, all of that. That has always existed. But I think, if the go-to-market strategy is with a platform and you will build something on top of that and start selling to the business users, sell there, and then you go to another business user and sell there, and then you want to penetrate into the kind of IT organization, so that gets pushed to multiple different other business users. That's that much more complicated, obviously, right?
Yeah, so but that's where, you got to land and expand, right? You land with one particular case, which is kind of like very de-risked initial landing spot where people can start testing and start seeing the value from your product, right? It comes down to, I take this class to some of my portfolio companies around the value waterfall. It's about showing what is that value that you deliver from your product, but you can't just end there, right? You really need to kind of, have the measurement mechanisms around kind of building that calculations around what are all the value that you have delivered. But the magic is around getting the customers to recognize that value that your product is delivered, acknowledge that product value to you, because in many cases, sometimes you see you're delivering a lot of value, but the value attribution is to the internal team saying that, hey, we did all of this, and that's why we delivered this value. That diminishes the value of the technology provider, right? So this is why we need to really, really kind of go into that aspect of how do you show value, how do you attribute value to your platform, and how much of that value that you can start capturing and build on that, right? So that's basically like it's an art that some entrepreneurs know how to kind of do that, and it's a process, and we just need to guide our founders through it.
It's an art, but I think in general, coming up one level, if you have the option of selling to one buyer and really go deep into that organization and have a lot of offerings that can be sold to one buyer, companies grow much faster. Those are much higher velocity companies than if you have to sell to multiple parts of an organization.
I 100% agree on what you're saying. So when you sell to the business user, that's what I mean, right? When you sell to people whose business you're directly impacting. But what I'm also suggesting is that, there are multiple stakeholders who influence the design. A business user.
Yeah, no, there are two issues here. This is a very interesting conversation, by the way. Those of you who you're listening, this is an extremely sophisticated conversation, and it's an extremely interesting conversation. So pay attention. There are, within any enterprise purchase cycle, there are multiple buyers. There's the economic buyer, there's the technical decision maker, there are internal champions, coaches, etc. So that permits you to make one enterprise sale happen in solving one problem. Now, what I'm saying is that if you go to market as a platform and you have one application with one business organization, another application, another business organization within the same enterprise, but then you have that whole complexity repeated multiple times across that organization. And that is a slower growth company than one where you can sell more into one purchase cycle. That's my
That's where, absolutely. And that's where you got to find where the burning platform is, right? I'll kind of, switch to a vertical application that we are.
Finding a vertical application that has clear ROI that you can sell, and then you can add ROI to that by doing more modules, more functionality, etc. If you build with that strategy, it's a much faster growth company.
Absolutely. I'll take an example if you have a little bit of time here. So one of my best performing companies is a company called AI Dash. I invested in them in August, September of 2020. At that time, they were using traditional AI techniques, right? Computer vision and machine learning, right? To focus on one problem, which is vegetation management. And so what they built is using satellite data. Satellite data is becoming cheaper, it is becoming more granular, it is becoming more frequently available. They don't operate any satellites, but they work off satellite data that is being generated at much finer, granular, um, frequent volume today, right? So they take that data and they have built models around which tree can grow, what species of tree it is, how fast it is growing, and if it needs to be trimmed and when it needs to be trimmed, right? So that's where the AI aspects of it come into play. But instead of kind of going and looking, providing this to many like households and many different use cases, they chose one industry where the problem is acute, which is utilities. And lots of people kind of advise me saying, okay, look, and we have this conversation with the founder itself. It's like utilities are hard to sell. So you get all of these cliches around, hey, don't sell to utilities, long sales cycle, utilities are, it's a wrong investment criteria, etc. But guess what? This company has been growing 100% year over year for the last 4 to 5 years. And why are they able to do so? Because it is really a burning platform with wildfires everywhere. And one wrong pole, one wrong tree that kind of interacts with the the transmission lines, etc., can cause a lot of damage and cause a lot of issues to millions of square miles of consumers, businesses, etc., right? So this is a real burning platform, right? But when I talk about kind of how they handled it, right? So they didn't stop at providing these vegetation models to utilities, because had they just stopped there, they would not have been successful, because there are many people who are providing these models. But what they discovered was, in utilities, you do give out contracts to people who cut trees 6 to 12 months, maybe even sometimes 24 months ahead of time, right? So you need a couple of things. One, you need to kind of really understand not just where the trees are today, but the tree will be in a future point of time. So you need to kind of have those predictions. But they also kind of built very easy to use mobile applications, tablet applications, that now enables arborists to kind of do before and after picture, right? After they cut the trees, before they cut the trees, uh, you know what this enables you to do is to do closed loop learning, right? You now have, if your model is not accurate, let's say it made a mistake, etc., it can now tell you, okay, your model is off by 5%, and this is the data, right? And now this data feeds into kind of improving the models. So these are the only guys in the market today that are delivering 90+% accuracy. And because of this, utilities are buying more, right? So this is a vertical end-to-end applications where you think about not just your models, but also the boring aspects about building that web application, building that mobile application, and that end-to-end systems. And you call it solution engineering. So you need to kind of think about that systems level design, right? So that's what we look at, right? Even though you may have the best model, if you don't think about it end to end, in the legacy industries, you fail, because they're not sitting with engineers like a Google or a Facebook to piece together solutions. You got to offer end to end, right? So that's one. Then you now sell, okay, we are the best intelligent vegetation management solution in the market today. That gets them in the door, that gets them win the RFP, and they are kind of doing the same value delivery, value conversations, etc., with their customers. But then you discover newer use case, and that is when I say land and expand. Like, for example, encroachment detection, right? Now they can put the same thing to faulty poles detection, right? So there are a lot of other operating use cases within the utilities whose decision makers are adjacent to your decision maker, but you have already passed through all the enterprise decision makers once, that enable you to expand to other decision makers adjacent to the business unit that you have originally sold to, right? So that is the way you expand. And that is what we try to, I mean, Jeffrey Moore's bowling pin strategy, right? You basically capture one and then you go to the adjacencies and then you get the entire stack that way.
Yeah. So I think for those of you who are listening, the subtlety is in if the decision makers are not adjacent decision makers, then the whole sales cycle has to be repeated. You may get a referral that, oh, we're using this product and this product is doing well for us. But if the adjacencies are not there, if it's an organization that is far removed from your use case, and right now, from a technology point of view, the same technology can be applied to a lot of different things. Your agent technology, for instance, can be applied to marketing use cases, can be applied to human resource use cases, it can be applied to engineering use cases, but in all of those cases, they're not adjacent use cases. They are far apart in the organization. If you look at the larger enterprise, that's an entire new sales cycle. So I think in general, focusing on all the boring aspects of one use case and really coming up with a full solution, the whole product. If you talk about Jeffrey Moore, it's the whole product as opposed to just a point product. If you have that, and if you train your sales force, marketing, everything to sell that one thing on a repeatable basis, repeatability, that kind of repeatability is what drives velocity. And without repeatability, if you have to reinvent solutions in every sales cycle, that is not how you can get to velocity. Okay.
One
Yash?
aspect.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So you mentioned a little bit of small domain specific models. So I just wanted to touch upon that aspect a little bit. So and our thesis there is like when you go into these vertical kind of workflows like I talked about, right? So a lot of these small domain models will be built organically within these solution providers who are focused on vertical industries, like be it in medical industries where somebody is an expert in regulatory information management, right? So we are seeing a lot of those small domain specific models being built organically from within the industries, and it's always a balance between kind of using an LLM with some contextual RAG type of augmentation of data, contextualization of data, versus kind of completely building your model inherently. So that is a balance that founders need to strike, right? And that debate is not yet proven where we know which side you is the winning strategy, because the capabilities of the large language models are becoming so strong. The context windows are increasing so quickly that if there is a startup which just says, okay, look, I'm going to build a small model in the healthcare industry. I need like $20 million to kind of do the first kind of first model. I think it is it may be faulty viewpoint over there. Rather, if you're in the workflow, if you have the data already, then you can have the debate between kind of, okay, look, here is how we kind of work on this kind of maybe small model for this one particular kind of force multiplier function that we want, and then augment the rest of it by the large language model. So it comes to system design, right? So that is where I think
that system design is exactly right, because if you can take a large language model that is already trained, and then you can basically deeper train it in a domain and somehow constrain it. And this is where I think there are lots of open questions on how much constraining is possible, and how do you do that? Those are still open questions. But if you can take, like, it's human beings, right? We are intelligent human beings, but we're not trained to do brain surgery. We're trained to do venture capital and tech startups. We're not trained to do brain surgery. So if you take an intelligent brain and want that brain to do brain surgery, that has to be trained in brain surgery. That's the analogy in human versus AI, or human applied to AI. but it's not quite clear exactly how the model is going to happen system design point of view, from a system design point of view.
Indeed.
Is there any other company that you want to discuss before we wrap up?
So there are, so the way kind of, we are thinking about it is like, we are kind of investing in two um, areas, right? And on one side, you take every single enterprise function, right? You take software development, you take customer engagement, you take revenue operations. They are being, initially being replaced by like a co-pilot and then a fully autonomous agent, right? So we have individual investments in each of those areas. And on the other side, we have these vertical applications, that is where, life is being disrupted by a lot of macroeconomic events like, which has led to supply chain disruptions. Climate change is kind of creating its own set of issues. And because of this, you have the opportunity to completely reimagine kind of, your workflows. So as I mentioned on the agentic software side, I mentioned companies on the vertical applications like AI Dash. One other company, even in some places like healthcare, is a company called SNVIA, which is basically kind of enabling medical device companies to kind of take every single step that they do from the time of creating a new medical device to bringing it to market. There are hundreds of thousands of steps, and the most important one is regulatory management. So there is like very specific forms that need to be filled, very specific answers that need to be provided for the FDA in order to go through a full FDA approval process. And the same process now needs to be repeated in Europe. Same process needs to be repeated in multiple countries within Asia, etc., to get like that international distribution. Right. So this company, SNVIA, has taken every single step of that process and built an end-to-end solution to automate bringing a medical device to the market. Not only that, now we are discovering that post introduction of medical devices, you need to kind of do what is called, post-market filing, where you need to look for whether any of your competitors have recalls in the market, whether you need to kind of, provide any further clarifications to the FDA, etc. So this kind of a post market use cases are now coming to the company, and now the company has expanded from one particular use case to multiple different use cases within the enterprises. So this way, what we are seeing is, you're taking this industry applications and breaking it down into various different steps. And now with that process intelligence in place, you have the ability to completely reimagine processes. So that's a place where some very, very interesting companies are going to be built. We are looking at companies in the legal space, construction technology, and so very excited about what is to come over there. So this is we're really at the beginning of a wonderful innovation cycle right now. So I can go on for a really long time.
I have one last question, Yash, before we adjourn. It's a question of co-pilots. I'm hearing this from, especially, the SaaS industry has been going on for a while now, right? It's coming up to 15, 20 years almost that the SaaS industry is going on. I would say around 2008 is when it started really hitting its stride. So now it's 2024. So it's been a while. Then AI came in. Let's say around 2015, 16. Generative AI came in last year. So there are cloud companies, SaaS companies, vertical SaaS companies that are much further along, that have some heft. But now there are AI companies coming into the same markets with AI-enabled solutions competing with those somewhat hefty vertical SaaS companies. And the answer from the incumbents is we do co-pilots to introduce AI into the process. What are you seeing in the market? It's not a sufficient solution to put AI AI enable a SaaS application. What is your perspective? What are you seeing in your portfolio?
So this goes back to kind of the data challenge that I mentioned, right? You have external data, you have customer context, you have internal communication, and you need to bring all of them together. And you need to be able to kind of, provide the right role-based access control, identity, etc. Right? There are a lot of questions that still need to be answered in this particular domain, right? For example, if there is an autonomous decision that is being made, who is in charge of that decision? You cannot, in an enterprise setting, you cannot say, hey, look, the machine made it, don't hold me responsible, right? There has to be a responsibility matrix around all of those things. So it is a fertile ground for innovation in each of these aspects around role-based access control for data, identity governance. um, you know so while existing companies, not everybody may have this data architecture, may not have this kind of critical feature set, right? So they need to upgrade their stack. So it's not like you need to kind of separate the fear and doubt, that the uncertainty and doubt, the FUD that they introduce, the big players, and into the market. I mean, a lot of them have. I'll give an example in the call intelligence space, right? There's a company which has kind of invested hundreds of millions of dollars to kind of be the best call intelligence software for sales reps, right? They worked on it for 7, maybe 8 years, have a lot of patents around that. But today, straight out of the box, a generative AI capability, be it like a Llama model or a OpenAI model, actually delivers better call intelligence than what they have spent 7 years, raised, probably $700 million in order to do this, right? So that's the reality that they have to grapple with. Not only that, they are sitting at 5, 7, $10 billion valuations. So they have to now show growth in the market in order to kind of build up to the valuation that they raise capital at 100x, 200x, forward-looking multiple, some of them. So while they create the fear, uncertainty, doubt in the buyers, in the buyer's mind, they have to deal with all of that. So what some of our younger companies are doing is to kind of take, okay, look, call recording has become very, very easy. So you can basically take this call, but bring in the context around all of these three types of data information that I mentioned: external data, internal data, customer context, and then provide the same function that these companies spent 7 years, $700 million to build, right? And this provides them the advantage, and they also provide the advantage to undercut the cost as well. So it is not as kind of black and white as, okay, I'm a company where I have a lot of existing customers, and I'm now going to introduce these co-pilots. It is not working out that way in the marketplace because their ability to price it has dropped significantly, right?
And
And
also, it
that's
depends on an old stack. So not all the
exactly.
pieces are in the right places, right? In the computer architecture, it's not in the right. It don't have things in the right places. So I kind of come out of this topic. I come out on the side of the young companies who are starting fresh, who may not have all these customers, but who are starting fresh with a fresh contemporary stack and building specific to that stack, and have new, fresh, nimble solutions that they can go in and disrupt these existing companies.
Indeed, 100%.
All right, well, it's a pleasure. We will continue the discussion in a few months. This industry is moving so fast. There's so much exciting stuff happening. So thank you for coming. Great to have you. And see you soon.
Thank you so much, Ramana. Always a pleasure. So, I mean, like Jensen says, right, the things are moving at so fast that you need to get on a train and start moving along this kind of path so that, you're able to catch up and learn, and, as we learn, there are more and more opportunities that are coming up. But thank you so much for hosting me today. It's a great honor and privilege to be in a conversation with you.
Thank you, Yash. See you soon.
Thank you so much. See you.
Folks, if you have questions, you are welcome to ask. This is, I see a comment, it's not a question, from Gaurav. Difference in the past versus now? Is the past sales rep used to educate the buyer, but now the buyer is doing most of the research themselves on dark social channels? Well, dark social channels are not. It is true that the buyer is doing most of the research themselves. That is absolutely correct. So creating enough content so that the buyer can do their own research and come to you inbound, as opposed to the sales reps going and knocking on those doors outbound, is definitely that the sales cycle is definitely changing. That is very, very good, very astute observation, Gaurav. Okay, I don't see any other questions. I have to run. Yash has to run. So thank you for coming. We will see you next week and continue the conversation. Bye, everybody.